All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Robert Douglas, and I'm your host today for episode 1 of our new live streaming webcast, Deploy Friday, where we're going to talk about the challenges and opportunities facing tech companies in the time of the coronavirus. I've got 3 guests with me today who will introduce shortly. But I think that the background for this webcast is evident and clear to everybody watching. We're in a time of global crisis. We've been besieged by a pandemic virus that is infecting people at terrifying rates and killing people as well. I just look at the stats today. We've got 565,000 global reported cases with over 25,000 deaths. And if you look at the news today, there are shocking headlines such as the Prime Minister of England, Boris Johnson, having been tested positive. So nobody is immune from this, literally. And everybody that I know adjust their working schedule and their working habits to work in quarantine from home, to practice extreme levels of social distancing, and basically change the way they're living their lives. So this has obviously had a great effect on tech companies around the world. I'm going to focus on tech companies because my company, Platform.sh, is also a tech company. So I've seen firsthand what that has, how that's affected us. So I thought it would be a great idea to get the founders of 3 really interesting tech companies together on this call. And those are Corey Hulen, who is the CTO and founder of Mattermost, Frank Karlitschek, who's the founder and the managing director of Nextcloud, and Fred Plais, who's the founder and CEO of Platform.sh. And we're going to have a conversation today with you, answering your questions as well about how we've had to react as 3 tech companies to this epidemic, and also about tools that can be used for enabling remote teams to communicate and work together when they suddenly have been quarantined and are having to work from their home offices instead of the office. So I'm going to give my guests a chance to introduce themselves. Why don't we start with you, Frank?
Sure. Yeah,
Hi,
as
and
you
welcome.
already said. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Well, Nextcloud is a company, I will talk a little bit about this later, where a lot of people are in home offices. So it's not completely unusual for us, the situation, but it's still a bit weird. So I'm really happy to be part of this show here. So it's not so boring for me here alone in the office. So yeah, my name is Frank Karlitschek. As I mentioned, I am an open source developer for a long time, for over 20 years, involved in different projects, different initiatives. I was an invited expert at a W3C to work on some internet standards. I'm an advisor to the United Nations regarding open source, intellectual property and licenses. Founded a few companies. That was called Nextcloud. That was the reason why I'm here. Yeah, I will talk a little bit about Nextcloud later. It's a collaboration software, so it's a sort of interesting time for us at the moment. And yeah, really happy to be here today.
So. I hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Corey Hulen, I'm CTO and co-founder of Mattermost. Mattermost is an open source, self-hosted message platform. We're collaboration software as well. Our company is also remote first, so it's really interesting these times. Companies moving to remote first, but even seeing coronavirus is impacting us as a remote first company. So it's going to be fun to talk about some of those challenges and some of the challenges our community and customers are facing as well.
Thanks, Corey. And Fred?
Yeah, hey everybody. Thanks for having me on the show here, Rob. Very appreciate. So I'm Fred Plais. I'm the CEO of Platform.sh. I'm a French guy living in San Francisco. I came over to the US 4 years ago with a wife and kids, and I run a great company called Platform.sh. We are a cloud hosting platform. We help web developers deploy, run, and manage their web applications. Think WordPress or Magento or Node.js. If you're building applications of that sort, Platform.sh helps you save a lot of time and money running them on a cloud. So that's what we do. We are a 180 people company today and distributed first as well. So most of the teams are working from home. We have still a couple of offices. Rather tiny, but just like my two esteemed colleagues here, Frank and Corey, we've got we know how to handle the a distributed workforce. We have the playbook for running remote, so that's less of the issue. I think doesn't mean it's a big major crisis, and we all struck by it, and very pleased as well to be able to testimony and talk about how we're trying to respond. We know it's hard times, and glad that if we can share our thoughts here and be useful to people, that's really awesome. So thanks for that panel, Rob.
Thanks, Fred. So let's get right into the questions that I have for you all. And I'll start with Corey, if that's okay. Advance warning on your mute button. How have you at Mattermost had to react? Even though you're a remote team, I'm sure that each and everybody in the company has had some impact on their life, on their working style, on their working schedule. Maybe, I hope not, but maybe even sickness. How have you reacted at Mattermost? What has changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. We implemented a lot of different policies. I mean, starting way back from like a no travel policy to stuff like that. But some of the stuff we've been doing lately is just running a lot of surveys at our company and trying to gauge the feeling of how our staff members are feeling. Like I said, we're a remote first company. We're in I think 22 different countries. We're seeing the impact people's lives at that level. Luckily, right now, nobody in our company is falling ill. That sort of family first mentality of we're already working from home. I think it's interesting, like as an organization that to begin with, you would think, and I think we are like better prepared than how to do all this stuff. I think you still see the individual impacts to people who now have, like, let's say they have their kids at home, right? And we've always had a family first, family friendly mentality that if a kid goes running behind the scene, we don't really care. Now we're encouraging it more because you're kind of seeing that daily impact. Just really, like I said, just to share, we ran some surveys, and I think make us feel really good. Like 80% of our employees feel they have adequate flexibility. So yeah, I think it's just that work from home mentality with kind of already how to do it, but understanding that their lives are impacted. And so even for us, like this number was actually higher than we think we would, or at least I would have guessed. 61% of our staff members feel coronavirus has impacted their work, whether it be distraction, low morale from other news or whatever, stuff like that. So I can't imagine if you're a sort of show up to work kind of company and everything's turned upside down, how you would feel about those things. So that's the stuff we're doing for our internal staff members. We're also just sort of prop up and help the community. Some stuff like I think 24/7 support for our open source forums and stuff like that. And we're also, I think, offering just like a half-hour session if people want to about remote work or learn how to run Mattermost and need help and stuff like that. So just trying to engage in more open and involved with our community. Those are some of the things we're doing.
Thanks. And how about you, Frank? How's that going at Nextcloud? You've said you're also a remote first company. Does that mean you felt really well prepared for this situation, or have you also taken a lot of steps?
Yeah, I think we are better prepared than other companies, but still, of course, it impacts the work. So in Nextcloud, we have accounted with employees in 11 countries. So we are really distributed, well, not all over the globe, but really in a lot of different countries, like from the US and a lot of European countries. And because of that, we always have this culture of working remotely. So we do very few like in-person meetings. We don't really do a lot of like video calls where everybody has to be there at the same time. So we can you hear me?
Yeah, it faded out and I thought you had stopped talking. Sorry, keep going.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. The internet, I don't know if the internet connection is bad. I don't know. Yeah, so we never really have a lot of in-person meetings or video calls where you have to be at the same time, because people have in different time zones, you know. So you can't. We try to organize everything in a synchronous way. So we use usually like tools where people can work like from where and how they want. That's also helpful because one thing that really affects us at Nextcloud is that in Germany, like in most countries, the schools are closed, which means a lot of people, they have their children at home. Of course, they have to take care of the children, which affects the working hours. So for example, people work like in the evening or in the morning or more in the weekend and whatever. So it's really change a bit. I mean, it always was flexible. We always had completely flexible working hours, but now it's really all over the place, right? So it's like, I don't know, sometimes we have a call about a topic and then we figure out that the best time to do the call is like 11 in the evening or something, because that's the time most people have time. So it's quite interesting. Another thing is, of course, that we have from time to time in-person meetings. So a few times a year, the whole company comes together, usually in our offices in Stuttgart or in Berlin. And for a week, we work together on topics and talk about things. And actually, this was supposed to be this week. So this week, actually, we wanted to have our big company meeting again. We do this like 3-4 times a year. But of course, well, obviously we had to cancel it. So we have to do this, our coordination meetings now also remote. That's also a bit of a change. 2 days ago, we had even a virtual social event where we had a call in the evening and everybody is in the evening sitting in front of the computer with a beer in the hand and we chatted about like all kinds of things. Yeah, we try to make the best of it. But yeah, I think we're better prepared than the companies where everybody has to be in the same building and everything is meeting in the same room. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And as you're saying that, I'm just amazed by the similarities between apparently how Nextcloud and Mattermost are working and how life at Platform.sh is. So, I mean, I want to put the same question to you, Fred. What have we done at Platform.sh to adapt to this? But I'll call out that you've been extremely proactive. You've written a blog post about the external facing aspects, but you've also had a lot of internal messaging that has had a big impact on the team. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, well, thanks, Robin. Yes, I mean, look, we're living in a very, very special time now, and people are very, very stressed. There's a lot of stress about pretty much anything and everything. You're stressed to be sick. You're stressed to be contagious and actually getting your relatives sick. You're stressed of losing your job. If you live in the US, we've seen that 25% of the workforce in just a week has either lost their job or decreased salary because a lot of hours are being cut. And you're also stressed about finding food in supermarkets because it's calmed down a little bit, but there was a crazy wave of people buying everything from supermarkets and shelves being empty. I mean, this is really special times, and that's actually just to be clear, setting a lot of stress on everybody's shoulders. Us first as owners and managers of companies, we feel responsible for our people and for business. And but I think the first thing we try and do is alleviate a little bit that stress away from the teams. So we thought that a good thing would be to just we're lucky, we're in tech, we're cloud, we're remote, all those keywords that make fairly resilient in such time. And I think the first message we wanted to convey to the team was, hey, it's okay, you are not going to lose your job. And I think I was surprised to see how people were relieved to hear that, because they were very in the dark. So the first, when I said that, it was pretty obvious to me that was clear, but I realized that it was a very important thing for people to hear. So we said, you're not going to lose your job. We must be doing fine. We obviously took the measures around health and safety first. So as you would expect, so we've got 2 small offices, we closed them down. We installed a travel ban fairly quickly as well. We discouraged. We also banned for physical meetings of any sort. So everything has moved to Zoom and Hangout, and we did that probably 10 days ago. So that was the second reaction. I think then as a business owner and as a CEO, I mean, then the rest of the responsibility was to focus about making sure that the company would continue delivering the job and the work, and so business continuity really was the focus of myself and the management team. So we made sure that we could ensure business continuity to our customers, that we would have a plan if many people would fall sick at the same time. We would have a way to to continue delivering the work. And what we're doing as well is, and that started early. We're still working on this. Is trying to understand the future and reforecast, because obviously the budget that we had worked on and approved a couple of weeks ago is obsolete now. And we need to see how we are going to just secure the next phases and the next quarters, and so we're working very actively on that plan. So that's basically how we reacted to hit at Platform.sh.
And Fred, I know that there are definitely customers in our portfolio who are under pressure. For example, we host a lot of sites for travel-oriented companies, and they're getting hit enormously hard. Have we also seen customers coming to us specifically to help them solve problems that have come up related to the coronavirus?
Well, we have actually, and there's people that are, I mean, we're basically running websites for people. So not being able to pay the bill or to renew the contract means your website is not live anymore. So it's one of the last thing you want to do to nowadays, where all the business is shifting to online. The last thing you want to do is terminate your cloud hosting provider. And so they can't, that's not an option for them. They can't freeze the contract for 3 months. Like, in some SaaS business, you can actually do that. Freeze your contract for 3 months, not use the service for 3 months, and then, you can't do that with us. So what we're trying to do is work with those companies that have been very badly hit. A couple of them, their revenue in March was 0. And so they're having a lot of trouble. So, under those circumstances, we're trying to work with them to find a, find a way for to accommodate and avoid that they go out of business faster because of us. So we're really trying to work with them. Now, we had a few special cases, and I want to be able to name the country, but just yesterday I had a very late phone call from a web agency, which whom we've been working for years now, and they're telling us, well, the country we live in and work in needs to put a site together for COVID-19 in 3 days, and we've been tasked to do that. So we're going to work, over the clock to get that site delivered by Sunday, and we need you guys to host it. Can you help? And so we said, yeah, of course. We're delighted that we can help right now, and so we we provisioned everything for them immediately, and tried to support. At this period of time, I think this is just the only way you can just try and help people that are in trouble, and be supportive, and participate to the gigantic wave of solidarity that we're seeing around the world. I think we just want to be a part of it, and be useful at this time. So it's pretty much what we're trying to do right now.
Thanks, Fred. So I wanted to talk about the tools that people can implement and use to help with remote work. Now, we're obviously really accustomed to using a lot of tooling to support our remote work. Corey, Mattermost is a tool that's widely used in remote work and for organization of all manners of things. Can you describe the tool for people who might not have used it? And can you maybe paint a picture of how a remote team could be built around using Mattermost?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Mattermost is a persistent messaging platform. So we're channel-based or topic-based. Probably the one to talk about, because anyone can join it and check it out. It's just our community itself runs on Mattermost, just community.mattermost.com. That's where, I don't know, 6,000 plus of our community members sit there, and hundreds of our staff members sit there. And we've actually run our open source community through that experience remotely, and our entire company there runs remotely. So we're a little bit different than probably most companies in the sense that we probably 90+% of our internal communication over Mattermost itself. So we still use email, but that's more for things like communicating outside of a company. But within a company, we're pretty much Mattermost first. And for us, it's lots of reasons. We as a company culture embrace that sort of what I call asynchronous written form communication. It's just how we operate. Sort of seems like there's some common themes, I think, between all the companies. We have people all the world, different time zones. You have to really have this sort of asynchronous mentality and almost anti-meeting mentality to make that system work, and having a lot of flexibility in terms of when people can work and what they do. And so, our culture, company, community really stresses that asynchronous written form sort of communication style. Don't get me wrong, we still have lots and lots of ephemeral Zoom meetings where we get together, we chat via Zoom or some other tool like Hangouts, but we're really at taking down copious notes and posting those back into a channel somewhere, or sometimes into a Google Doc, depending on how we want the conversation to live on and stuff like that. And so that's some of the stuff that we do really hard. We also, I think, being a remote first company, and we went through a lot of different experiences. Like, we're even faced with this now, before 19 and even after now, it's even more so, which is a remote first company. How do you make your company more sociable? How do you get that human connection going on? And so for us, we actually have a lot of interesting social channels where we invite people to when they first join the company. Things like, we have one that's social animal. People go in there and post about their animals. And there's just some rules or etiquette to certain channels, like the social animals channel. I think if you mention your pet's name, you're required to post a picture of it. So there's just a bunch of stuff like that. There's a cooking channel where people are posting what they're making. We even do a lot of like impromptu things where we hold a developer voice only chat. So if you're working and you just want to kind of chat with other people, go on here, voice chat, stuff like that. We even have another one where it's a social video game where we try to get together. The team, various people in the team, got to get together, 1 hour a week and play video games and stuff like that.
And these are all features that Mattermost supports natively.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like we're just a channel-based or topic-based, persistent chat mechanism. So you can have a lot of integrations with other tooling, especially as a developer, like being integrated with things like Jira and GitHub. So you're kind of done in the day or whatever, stuff like that. But you can upload pictures to it and all that kind of stuff. And so I think not only do we build as a company build a tool that sort of promotes or helps with that sort of remote first culture, it's a culture we live and breathe. And so, we're very passionate about what we build because we use it, daily or whatever. So hopefully that answers gives you some talking points for the.
It does, and it sounds very familiar to our working culture as well. So Frank, I heard a lot of keywords leading up to your topic about Nextcloud, namely Google Documents, Zoom, stuff like that. What do you have to say to that? What does Nextcloud offer?
Yeah, maybe I can start with give you a little bit of the history. So I started this whole idea 10 years ago, like in January. There was a 10 years anniversary. The idea at the time was, so there was no real name for this kind of product category. So I thought someone should build an open source Dropbox. So it's of course a bit weird if you identify yourself with the name of a competitor, but this was the original motivation. So I have something like Dropbox, so you can sync and share your files, web interface, mobile apps, desktop client for syncing and so on. You can share it, have versioning and so on. So this was the original idea. But from the very beginning, we already had an extension API, like a plugin API. Or apps, we actually call it, because intentionally we thought this should be more than plugins. Maybe we want to have like full applications built on top of the software, so it becomes like a real platform. Yeah, and then over the years, people built like all kinds of features into the software. There was a calendar and contacts and email client and note-taking and chat and all kinds of stuff. And became more powerful, and actually, in January, like a few weeks ago, we embraced this, all these functionalities, and thought, okay, we're really repositioning ourselves. Because if you look at all the components that the community has built, we have a very super active open source community. We have over 2,000 people who voluntarily, for free, contribute software to our product. So with all these functionalities that comes together, if you really think at a big picture, because we have file sync and share, we have document editing of Office documents, chatting, video calling, calendar contacts, like chat solutions, similar to Mattermost, and so on, a lot of stuff. If you combine all of that, what we really are is like a full alternative to Office 365 or G Suite from Google. So that's
You did it. And that's actually a point I want to bring up, because Corey avoided it very nicely, but you did it. You compared yourself to the proprietary versions of tools that people know. And the reason I'm calling out that moment, like it's so easy to say that Nextcloud is a self-hosted open source G Suite, or Nextcloud is a self-hosted open source Office 360, or Mattermost is a self-hosted open source Slack alternative. Now, that doesn't necessarily feel good to us, but when I look around at all of the posts and the blog posts and the webinars and the how-to articles that people are writing right now about how to do remote work and get through the crisis, what tools are they what tools are they promoting? They're promoting the proprietary tools, but we all know, because we deal with this every day, that not everybody's able to adopt those tools. So why not? Why would you want a self-hosted free software alternative to that, Frank?
Yeah, first of all, to your point, that's of course you got me right. I used the names of the competition, but I think this is fine in this conversation here. Of course, on our website you don't really see it like that, but in reality we are just in the same market. It's just a competitor, and if you compete with customers, if you offer our solution to customers, we often compete with the solutions from Microsoft or Google. That's just a fact. We are not the same. We're definitely not the same. We are like strong in some areas, weak in some other areas. It's not a copy or something, but it's definitely our market. That's what we are. With some, as you mentioned, with some key differences, right? They're not just copying someone else. It doesn't make sense. The number one difference is, of course, that we are on-prem, that we can host it wherever you want. I mean, in the classic way, in the old school, and in the old times, everybody was hosting like Nextcloud on their own server somewhere. But that's, some people like to do that, or some companies have servers in their basement, they can do that. Or of course, they're hosted at a hosting center of a provider they like, because it's certified, GDPR compliant, has some other special requirements, special contracts, whatever. And they can do that because, as you know, this other software as a service solutions, you mentioned some already, also like Slack, for example. It's just, it's a service. You can use it or not use it. That's the only choice you have. You can't really say, yeah, I like it, but I want to have it like close to me, or have an additional certification, or I want to audit the code, right? It's, by the way, another big thing that is possible with open source. For example, we're supplying a lot of security sensitive organizations. So the German government with 350,000 users, all ministries, they use Nextcloud internally. And the French Ministry of the Interior is also using Nextcloud. The European Commission is using Nextcloud, and so on. And they all have in common that they're running it on their own infrastructure that's not even connected to the internet. Right? They have their internal infrastructure, the intranet, basically, high security, not connected to the internet. And this is where there's collaboration tools like Nextcloud are running. And this is something you can only do with open source. And another thing they did is they audited the code. They actually paid companies to look into the source code and check, like, for security problems or backdoors or some other things. And they checked it and, okay, there is no backdoor, fine, then we can use it. That's just not possible with the classic software as a service solutions. So and I can go on, but there are many advantages for open source software, I have to say.
And Corey, does that resonate with you as well? Are those the primary reasons why people choose Mattermost over Slack? I said it, sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think Frank hit the nail on the head. Like, for us, it's, where we see our customer base, the user and community, is really around the privacy sort of angle, around that, what we call data sovereignty, right? High trust. Whether that's running, on their own private network, whether it's running in things like AWS GovCloud or Azure GovCloud. We're in the service, we're in a lot of regulated industries, whether that's, US government industries or even European government industries. But that tends to be our sweet spot, is exactly that. Either people who really care about privacy, people who really care about things like auditing and compliance, even whether it be from a security standpoint, or they want to know what the code is doing standpoint. And then from what we call like a data sovereignty compliance, right? It's your own data, you should own it and do what you want with it. And so, yeah, that's our as well. So what Frank mentioned resonates with us as well. Very similar.
So how about you, Fred? Do those messages resonate with Platform.sh, and Platform.sh customers are our customers looking for data sovereignty, high trust, compliance, and can we host self-hosted on-prem apps for customers who are looking for those?
No, of course it does, and we are big proponents of open source as well. And we are trying to be a partner to open source vendors, actually, to improve their business models in packaging up their products along with our path, and offering what I think is best of both worlds, which is the flexibility and the customizations of open source that open source enable, but also the without compromising on the ease of deployment and maintenance. And so we're seeing ourselves as an enabler to this. These guys at the front seat, I would say, and we're in the background. And the way we're seeing our mission, our role is to just enable those those softwares to be easy to deploy on the cloud and enable customizations the best we can. And so really that's on the way we see it, for us is really our mission is to enable developers to pick and choose the right tools. And God knows that today the amount of choice that people have, that developers have to accomplish their job is just extremely exciting, because very wide, and today's developers want to use the right job for the right tool for the job, and so we want to enable that that variety and that diversity to to just happen and make those developers more efficient and focus on the right things. So absolutely, the message resonates. In terms of market, market feedbacks we're getting. I mean, it's I'm not surprised that Frank has got so much success with European companies and public companies, because this is primarily, I mean, obviously those guys care even more about data localization and data sovereignty, and I think they are actually front runners to that wave, because it's actually something that everybody cares about more and more. And so, if the public market has embraced that vision, earlier than the rest of the private companies, I think, they're really a front leader, and private companies are also embracing that trend right now, willing to really understand and make sure that they've got control over their employees and users' data as much as they can. That's the world where we're going, is definitely driven by control of data. Data is extremely precious. We're starting to realize that. It's been a few years, and people care a lot about how they're handled, where they are located, and what people can do with it, and who can access to it. And I think this is why open source has got a great future ahead of it. It's because of that that absolutely amazing importance that data has taken in the past years.
Note that both Mattermost and Nextcloud can be launched on Platform.sh, even for a free trial if you'd like, using links that are in the description below. In the YouTube video, we link off to the GitHub repositories for both of those systems that we maintain, along with the extra Platform.sh files that are needed. And there's a deploy on platform button on those GitHub pages. When you click that, it goes off to do an installation on Platform.sh of either Mattermost or Nextcloud. And I would also like to add that we're actively maintaining those and updating them with new functionality pretty rapidly right now, because these are really hot topics for us, and we see a lot of potential in both of these systems. So feel free to try launching either of those systems on Platform.sh now or in the future. And if you run into any problems, then just reach out through the support on Platform.sh, and we'll give you as much help with that as we can. Now, we actually did have a question now from one of the people viewing. Bernardo, who is a self-confessed Nextcloud user, he's got a question, which is a global issue. He's claiming that the global issue of the coronavirus in particular has exposed how we still don't have interoperability of systems apart from email. For example, like with calendars. So there are all sorts of calendaring systems. I'm sure we've all seen this before. And if you're getting a calendaring request from somebody who doesn't use the same calendaring system as you do, then, well, it doesn't work. I mean, my personal pet peeve is chat on my mobile phone. I probably have 7 or 8 apps at any time that people are chatting to me on, and I want to chat with all of them, but they're not interoperable. So I really see that as a problem too. So when do we think we're going to get proper interoperability of critical communication systems? Frank, you guys kind of work on that, right? Do you have anything to say to Bernardo? Still on mute, Frank.
Sorry. Excellent question. Really, really excellent question. It's a really good point, because, I mean, according to our statistics, we have about 400,000 Nextcloud servers on the internet. So 400,000, there's 400,000 Nextcloud servers. So That's great. So we successfully decentralized the internet, great, by creating 400,000 islands, basically, that are isolated from each other. And that's, of course, not the goal. Right? The goal is so to have a federated and distributed infrastructure which can actually talk to each other. So this is why features to do communication between different servers is for 5-6 years really in the focus of us. And we are developing all kinds of APIs and standards for interoperability to basically collaborate across different installations. And we started with the file sync and share, because I mentioned before, that's like the core of Nextcloud. This is something that's really several years old. And you can already have a shared folder, or two people can have a shared folder that are actually on different servers. And for that, we developed an API that can do that. And we even created this like an open standard. And in this case, the standard is also supported by competitors of us. So there are 2-3 competitors of us. We implement the same API. And between those different competitors, we can all have shared folders. It's a bit similar like email, right? You have a mail server, I have a mail server, you have different email clients. It doesn't matter, because we can still send each other emails because we use the same APIs. And this is what we implemented for file sharing. And we're in the process of expanding this to more and more functionalities. For example, we support the Activity Hub, Activity Pub API standard from W3C. That's actually something where I contributed a little bit to the standard. So for the social interaction. So this is something that's used by Mastodon, which is also a distributed social network. And we support the same API in Nextcloud. So Nextcloud can be a node in this global network. There we support also this API. But there are still areas, like you mentioned, the calendaring, where there is no real federated standard yet. So it's at the moment not possible that you and me have a shared calendar while we are on different servers and maybe using different products. That's not possible at the moment. But I hope over time, also with the help of the bigger market of the open source community, we can build more and more of these interoperability standards, because it should be possible, just like email, where you can have different implementations of servers, different implementations of clients. It doesn't matter if you have a mail server at home or at your university or a service provider, it doesn't matter. We can all send mails. And this is how it should be with collaboration. We should be in chat channels. We should do collaborative editing in the same Office document with different cursor, while we are on different servers and different continents, different products. And we are working on that, yeah, step by step. The full solution is still a bit far away, but we are tackling one use case after another.
Yeah, we're doing something as well. We have something called Matterbridge, and it's the same thing. It's kind of bridging these other tools, bridging the other standards. Something develop our community, which is really awesome. And I think that it really shows the power of open source, right? You have the community come together who's working on a bunch of this bridging technology as well. So it's kind of similar boat for us.
Is bridging technology, I mean, that's useful and good. Don't we kind of wish that there would be more global agreement on standards somehow?
I would love that, yes. I mean, I think the hard thing is always getting, an open source company, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a standard, but it's at least open source. Anyone can go do it, implement it. The hard thing is always getting proprietary companies to get on board. So you end up, I think the reality is you end up, where the rubber meets the road, you end up building a lot of bridging style technology. So it's a sad fact, but I think that's kind of where we are. So.
Fair enough. Would you agree with Bernardo from the viewer question that the current crisis situation reveals some of the shortcomings in our technology environment and the way the technology ecosystem is implemented worldwide, especially for critical systems that could save lives?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I think the more that we can bridge or interoperate between companies, between communities, the more we can share information easily and readily. Is the more, especially when we're fighting things like, a global pandemic. I mean, that would be an awesome environment or world to live in.
Yeah, I think
it's going that direction, but these things take a lot of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, and to add to this, Corey and Frank, I think this is This is I want to give a color of hope in this chat, because we're in crisis, and crisis also means opportunities. And I think this is a time where people will change their ways of doing things. This is the time for change. People are discovering that they can work from home efficiently. People are discovering that well, actually, doing meetings on Zoom and using Mattermost or asynchronous messaging for your team is actually very valuable. And to me, I think this is also the world will be different after COVID-19 in terms of how people use the internet on a daily basis. So my hope is that standards and the lack of standards actually becomes more obvious, and we see a momentum, a strengthened momentum towards standard, towards interoperability in terms of good use of the right tools on the internet as well. I think this is going to be the positive outcome of this crisis.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks. We have another question from a viewer who claims to host Nextcloud in his basement. Which is cool. So Larry asks, if you have an organization that's already using Slack, Dropbox, G Suite, etc., what's the best way to convince them to using Mattermost, Nextcloud, and other free open source replacements for those tools?
That's a good question. If you have the answer, let me know. I mean, as I mentioned before, I'm for over 20 years part of the open source community, and for a long time we tried these classic arguments that are about licenses and freedom, and you can see the source code and so on. And of course, the open source community has some success, but it was really hard to convince like the big companies and governments that this is a good thing, or that they should really care. I mean, as soon as they hear licenses, they're like, okay, yeah, that's enough for me. I call my lawyer, and I'm not really, I don't know. But since a few months, or maybe a little more, a year or two, the term digital sovereignty really popped up in the European level, and in Germany and France and other areas. It basically means that, hey, this whole digital life, this digital communication, home office, collaboration, this whole software internet thing, that's no longer just a hobby or a side project. This dominates our life. This dominates our companies, our organizations. So this is really mission critical. We really need to collaborate, to communicate. We need all of that. And then, of course, they realize that actually they don't have these features and these functionalities really under control, because they're just a customer. You just basically, you rent it. And to make it worse, for a lot of cases, you only have one supplier for it. And that's often on the other side of the planet. And then there's a realization that this is maybe not really good and not really healthy. And since like a few months, there's, I don't know, 1.5 years, there's really the movement going on in Europe, but we hear this from customers in Asia, the same. We think, well, these are so important pieces of our infrastructure. We need to have it a bit under control. And under control, at the end of the day, it means open source. Because open source, you can actually, as I mentioned, you can look inside what's going on. You can host it yourself. You can, if you don't like one service provider, switch to another service provider. If you don't like the company who's building the software, it doesn't matter. You can take the software and maintain it yourself, and so on. So you have a lot more control about this important asset. And this is something, these are like factors that really resonate nowadays. And I think it was maybe a bit of a mistake of the free software and the open source community for the last 20 years to focus purely on licenses. Licenses are like important to enforce some freedoms, but it's nothing really that normal people or politicians really understand.
Great, thanks. And So there are no more questions, and we've gone through our agenda. But before we wrap up, I wanted to ask a question of everybody. Do you have any predictions about what software and work and remote work and communication will look like when we're done with this virus? I mean, I think everybody's slowly coming to terms with the fact that it's going to be around for a long time. It's going to change the way people interact with each other in public for a long time. Are we going to see similar changes in the nature of work, the nature of employment, the nature of software use? Who has a prediction?
I'll start. I would say, I think there's going to be a big change. There's going to be a before and after, and I really believe that people will question whether they need this big headquarter building in the center of San Francisco anymore. They're going to question whether these 20 hours, 5 days of yearly remote commute. Of yearly commute is really necessary for their teams. If there's not a way to have their time better spent, and I think we're going to be even more digital than we were already. We thought we were maxing out on screen time. I don't think we are. We might actually get even further than what we currently do. I don't know if this is good news, but definitely, the digital activities will take even more space in our lives. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same thing. Like I give this talk called "Building a Fully Remote Development Team." I've given it on and off for about 3 years, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember when I first gave it. And the first talk I gave 3 years ago was very much like, people showed up to it more as like a zoo. Like, I want to see what this crazy zoo is of remote work. And I gave it recently, a couple months ago, and it's more people sitting down, like kind of taking notes. This is all before sort of COVID really kicked off, like taking notes, like, okay, this is really interesting. So it's already shifting that direction. And I think with all the COVID stuff, I think you're going to see a mass acceleration of that, right? And it's going to be, I think it's going to be really interesting times, because like I said, I mean, a bunch of the sentiments Fred said, like, I think I would echo as well. Like, people are going to start questioning a lot of their, like, why do we do this? And lots of it is because that's what we've done in the past. But I think there's a lot of new opportunity for ways for people to work remotely that I think we're going to find. And even beyond what we do as a remote company, like, I'm sure we're going to steal a bunch of ideas from other people who come up with, like, hey, this is the best way to do this. I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, that's a problem in our organization we need to fix. And even though we've been doing remote since the beginning of Mattermost, we're always I think that's one of the interesting things about being a remote company and kind of struggling through that, is you're always really open to trying new sort of remote work styles or remote tools, whatever it is, like things, and so I think there's going to be a huge acceleration of that, which is going to be interesting to see.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to wrap it up with the panel discussion right there, but with the reminder that in the video description, there are 2 links that you can use to try both Mattermost and Nextcloud on Platform.sh. And I would encourage you all to subscribe to our channel, because next week for episode 2 of Deploy Friday, I'm going to be speaking to people running hackathons around the world to put the crowdsourcing nature of coders and volunteers around the world to work combating the coronavirus. And I'm going to show you projects that are coming out of those hackathons and discuss how people are organizing them and the impact that they're having. So join me next week for that discussion. Subscribe to the channel. And thank you, Corey. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Fred, for this great conversation. And thank you all for tuning in. All right.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks a lot, and stay healthy, everybody.
Yes, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.